Thank you very much. I am excited to join you again today, and we're going to talk about housing, but from a different angle. So if you've got a comment, if you have a question, if you have a story to share, if you know of an example that you've heard someplace else, then feel free to put that right into the chat box and we will share those together. And then if I say something and it really resonates with you, it's really great if you'll put that back into the chat box, because then that lets other people see it. It's kind of a review for other people and they go, oh yeah, that hit for me too. And that also lets me know which items are working the best. And if you just put, yeah, right on, and you don't put any, like, I don't know what the subject was, when I go read it, then I may have no idea what you were referring to at the time. So put in those things that resonate with you and we'll talk about them. So when Deb and I did our survey of rural challenges this year, the lack of good housing was the top challenge this year. And so it was picked by over half the people, well over half of the people. So we also know that you've told us that housing is a challenge anytime that we visit your communities and anytime we talk with people personally, we hear about housing issues. So the disclaimer is I am not an expert on housing programs in Kansas or funding streams in Kansas, and you have those experts available to you locally. And just last month, Nancy made sure that those folks were here to talk to you with those specific programs available to you in Kansas. I will say this though, there is no one right answer. There are no best practices that work in every single town to address every single housing challenge, because in your town, it might be mostly about the condition of existing houses, or maybe you have a lot of dilapidated housing that needs to be removed. Or maybe that you're looking at increasing the amount of housing, and that might mean new housing in low to moderate income brackets. Or it might be a lack of higher market housing so that people can move up and free up other houses. So the problems are too complex for there to be any one single solution that always works everywhere. So I can't wave the magic wand to give you easy answers that are just going to solve all of those problems. But what I can do is help you with the idea-friendly method, which makes any big project into something far more practical and doable. So the idea-friendly method says to gather your crowd, bringing together people who are attracted to this particular issue. And then you turn that crowd into a powerful network by building connections. And then you and your newly powerful network get into action immediately by taking small steps. You'll be building a groundswell of support to help you tackle what is really a huge issue. And you're going to experiment and learn your way forward together. And since your situation is different from other towns, maybe even right next door towns, the idea-friendly method helps you customize any idea you pick up from anywhere, any resource you're able to tap from whatever place, and make sure that it's going to work for your community long before you commit the big dollars and the expensive master plan that's going to be hard to change in times that have proven to be extremely fast moving. So after we talk about how to apply the idea-friendly method, then I'm going to share a whole bunch of promising ideas that we've picked up from around the country that almost any community could adapt, some of them at very low to no budget whatsoever. And then we'll also have a lot of time. I've left some time so that we can talk about these things and you can share around this, as well as leaving you some time for just general partner share about other stuff going on in your areas. So I'm going to start with how to apply the idea-friendly method to housing issues. Now, the first part is to gather your crowd. You can't do much about housing all by yourself. So you definitely want to attract people who also care about this issue. So you're going to do things that get people talking about housing. And then you're going to be conspicuous doing that so other people can find out that you're working on this and be attracted to you. For example, you could use a mock-up of a house to get people talking. What if you borrowed a model modular home from a builder and then you put it on an empty lot during some big event in your town when there's going to be lots of people? You gave tours and you talked about the broader housing project and not just that model house. Or if you can't borrow a model home, then make your own mock-up of a new home with cardboard and duct tape. borrow a playhouse from some kids, and then hold those conversations in that conspicuous location during the event to let people know that there's a housing project going on, that you're trying to create a thing. As long as you have something for people to see and talk about, you can be conspicuous and draw people in. Now, the goal, of course, is to spark conversation about the need to increase and improve your housing. So you might put signs in front of your little playhouse or your cardboard house or in the rooms of the borrowed model house. And maybe there's on the signs you're putting the hashtag that you're using to discuss this on social media. Or maybe you have other people along with you who are acting as hosts or guides to stand there and talk people through the idea of what you're trying to accomplish in the town. So that would be one way to attract people to you, to gather your crowd around this project. And then even if that's too big, then a smaller idea, any individual could walk around town, walk around your community, take pictures of empty lots within the community that somebody could put a house on. Then take a picture, post it online, tag it with like build here or build a Jetmore, and then use your favorite local hashtags, whatever else you're using to get people to talk about things. That's going to generate conversation. It's going to get people thinking about housing. So I want you to think right now for a moment about how you could bring people to a specific place, like at the event with your model house, or a specific place online with your like build here photos that you could start that conversation. So pick up your pen and just think for a moment about how you could get people brought into the conversation. Now, the next part of the idea-friendly method is to build connections. You bring a lot of people in, you're gathering them up, but they won't automatically know how they could help. They may be interested, but they don't know how to help. So you know how these kind of conversations go. You talk about, hey, we're trying to build more houses right here in town using the empty lots. And people will nod and they will look excited and they will look at you and go, that sounds good. Hope it goes well. Good luck with that. But they don't do anything because we haven't done something to make them understand how they build that connection. So I'm going to give you two very powerful questions you can use to move people from being part of the conversation to them taking an immediate action that helps so that they feel connected to this project. So the first powerful question is, ask them this: who do you know who knows more about this? Who do you know who knows more about this? And then the second one is, do you have or know where to find a resource that we need more of, right? So do you have or do you know where to find people with plumbing licenses, or whatever the thing is that you're looking for to make your project move forward a step? Who do you know at City Hall that can help us with this? Who do you know at the county jurisdiction, or who do you know at the statewide program? So just having those two questions ready where you can ask about who they know or where to find things help you move people from just being part of the conversation and going, good luck with that, to actually being part of the group that is trying to make things happen. So I threw those into the chat box, and you can write those down or copy or shoot a photo with your phone. I don't care. So the last part of our idea-friendly method is taking small steps. And this is really the magic part, because everything about a housing project seems big. It's going to take big money to build houses. It takes big plans to add a whole new development. It takes big involvement by all the bigwigs in town that have all the big money. Well, Idea Friendly says you can just forget about all the big stuff just for a moment and take small steps, starting with just one. So if you set up a model home and start conversations, that would absolutely count as taking a small step. But there's lots of other ways that you can do that. You can take a small step that doesn't require a budget. It doesn't even require people to get together in person. Now, for example, you could get a group of people to tour different places around town. So you might tour open spaces that would be good for adding a lot of housing, or you might go out and spend some time spotting those existing empty lots that you could fill in with some new housing among the older houses. Or you could spot houses that require improvement, that need rehab, so that you could identify those, so that you could connect them with the resources that you found when you were asking that question, who do you know that has this resource we need? See, when you do groups and you tour together, then they're going to talk to each other. And so you want to teach those people those two powerful questions. Who do you know who knows more or has what we need? And then you're going to have the whole crowd building connections, because you know a lot of people. The extension people know a lot of people, but the people you know even more people, and they know some people you don't. And that's how you build connections and get out. Now, if you cannot gather people in person, which I think in Kansas, it's no problem. Or if you're just working on this in a way where you can't actually gather people in person, you can also spur conversations with maps. So even if you just made a map of those same areas you'd like to tour, and spread those around and talk to people, encourage them to go look at things. And that's going to generate some interest and conversation. So that's the quick overview of the idea-friendly method. And then if this is your first time hearing the idea-friendly method, you may want to watch our idea-friendly method video at savior.town. And because you're going to have a lot of ideas in mind for your housing project, that video will walk you through the process more in depth. But that means now we get to move to the fun part, which is putting the method into action with lots of different possible housing projects, examples, and ideas, because we all love ideas. There's no one idea that's going to work everywhere. Some of these are promising and very adaptable and have the most value for the widest range of situations. So we're going to talk about, first we'll talk about improving your existing housing, because you already have an investment there. And then we'll talk about adding more housing, which is the part that all the bigwigs want to talk about. So let's start with improving your existing housing, because small towns, this is a huge issue. But even before you raise any money or you start, doing anything formal on improving housing, you can kick off that conversation about the housing condition just by making maps. Andrew Ladisaw of Katanning, Pennsylvania, which has a population of 3,700, he made maps of all of the housing, all the houses in the specific neighborhoods. And then he just walked around, he walked down the sidewalk, and he looked at each house in the block, and he assigned it a condition score of in great shape, needs minor repairs, all the way to we need to bulldoze this. So he scores them on their condition. And then he rates, how hard would it be to fix this up? How hard would it be to rehab it? So there's like easy fix to like really difficult. And he put those scores on the map, put a pin for each house, rated it for its condition, and how hard would it be to improve its condition. And those maps, he has been able to connect with all the organizations that try to help homeowners and renters with improvement projects, weatherization, rehab. He's been able to coordinate their efforts because everyone can see which houses need the most work and which are the easiest to fix up. And this has really helped spur the revitalization. So those organizations have concentrated on the neighborhoods that Andrew has scored. And there is a link to this video where he explains his process. It's in the slide document that Nancy will be sharing, and it is well worth the time to watch that. And Deb actually probably can pull up that link and throw it in the chat as well, but it is in that slide document. Callie McLaughlin says, appraisers usually score this by normal course of work, but they won't do every single house in the neighborhood for you unless you pay. Andrew walked up and just did it himself. So Andrew did it on the cheap, which you can understand. Your local planning building may have a blighted list already or a list scheduled for demolition. If that's already going on in your community, that's why you ask those questions. Who else do you know who's working on this? Who else do you know that knows more about this or has these resources? And so Callie's also a good person to ask these questions of, has a lot of connections to these resources. And then it depends on the size of your town, right? I live in a community of 30 people. And so I could do the mapping, but we don't have a local planning building area for our little tiny village neighborhood here, or a blighted list. So mostly we could just walk up the street and talk to people. So that's a walk up the street and talk to people project. So Callie says that's her coworker in the window. It's not Zoom bombers. All right. And Deb has thrown into the chat the video of Andrew. Don't watch that right now. Watch that later, but you want to go bookmark it right quick if you want to. It will be in the slide document that you're going to get from Nancy. So that's a really low budget program if you think about it, because all you have to do is look at the houses and just eyeball them, or walk with somebody who knows more about houses than you do if you're not a housing person, and make a map. Even if you make it on paper, even if you're not high tech like Andrew and put it on Google Maps, if you just like take a paper map with you and like write on it, this is a really low budget thing that any community could do. It would work even in my little village of Hopeton with 30 people, right? I could walk up the street and do this. Another project that you can do without much budget at all for communities that don't have a lot of money to work on this is the issue of clouded titles. And we run into this a lot. Property owners who die without a will, and that just creates this huge title mess for any property that they were owning. And you end up with half a dozen family members living in 4 different states, and they each own these undivided shares of houses. And that means that it's really hard to sell the property. If you live in it, you can't mortgage it because you don't have the whole thing. You can't get a home equity loan for improvements. And so as the years pass, these split up houses, the condition of the homes just are going to decline. And more of this happens in your town than you realize. I can point you at half a dozen houses in the nearby town of Alva, Oklahoma, which is just like 14 miles from the Kansas border. I bet there's half a dozen houses I could show you that I know of. And so to prevent this, you need legal help that can help people create wills and help them sort out problems that already exist. Now, a big city example is I only know about it because it got written up, but it's the city of Philadelphia. They realized they had this kind of problem. And they also knew they had several legal aid kind of organizations that offered some free help, but they weren't connecting up. So the city set up a program just to help property owners connect with the legal help so that they could clear up those existing title problems and then prevent new problems from happening in the future. And there is a link to the story that details how Philadelphia did this, and that is in that slide document that Nancy has for you. And so this is one that any small town could adapt, and you can connect the property owners with legal assistance resources. And this is important for small towns because those are not normally based in your town. And so people that own a house or a share of a house in your town probably don't know where they go to ask for legal assistance if they can't afford to hire a lawyer. And then Callie has some more thoughts that you can ask a student in GIS or architecture or landscape to help you out, to map out to do the mapping like Andrew did in his town. Wholesalers will buy the worst of the worst properties and usually pay for the title clean as part of the process. Craig's asking, I'm going to let that question sit. Does land bank help with clouded titles? And I don't know. So, all right. The next thing that you can do with almost no budget or no budget at all is to help make people aware of some of the free resources that exist to help improve and rehab your housing. So because we have older populations in our small towns and older people own more of the housing and they're less able to maintain it, it's smart to look at ways to make the housing in your town more accessible to people of all ages. So as you're as you're asking people, what are those programs? And as you're leveraging those programs that were discussed in the previous session, then you want to also look at making sure that it's accessible and livable for people of all ages. AARP Livable Communities has a free home fit guide and worksheets to help make homes more livable. So it's a great resource if you're working on improving the quality of existing local houses. And again, that link is in the slides that Nancy's going to share. And Deb's got the link for you right there in the chat because Deb is on the ball. Now, while you're there, look around because AARP has dozens of housing related resources that work for you as well. One of the projects that where people took we had an older couple, their house was in rough shape. This one comes from Centerville, South Dakota. They have a population of about 900 people. And a few people noticed that there's the one particular older home, their older couple, and their home was just in really poor repair. They've got multiple tarps on different parts of the roof, and the siding's kind of fallen off, and they've got leaky, really old windows. And so these friends found a program that helped homeowners by providing materials for home rehab, but not the labor or costs. So that was a self-help program. Well, this couple is in their 70s. The husband is legally blind, and they're not going to self-help do all that work, right? We're not sending him up the ladder onto the roof. That's a bad plan. So these friends, they just gathered their crowd. The initial volunteers were joined by some people from organizations, church members. They even called some guys from the football team. And they spent several months doing the work of rehab, repair, weatherizing. They replaced all the windows. And so, of course, the couple was thrilled to have so many repairs finished. And the volunteers were excited and decided to use this as the start of something larger. And they called it Centerville Cares, which is something you can search on it and you'll be able to pull it up. Centerville Cares. And it's from South Dakota. And they've done, I think, one or two more houses since then. But it was just something that kicked off a lot of conversation and got people excited. So that was an example of connecting people to a resource that was already out there and then gathering your crowd of volunteers to make it happen. And let's see here, keeping your housing in decent condition. And this goes back to what Callie said about wholesalers will buy a house in really rough condition. That's not always a great plan for your town because, you know, corporate real estate investors buy up rental housing even in the tiniest of towns. And they have a terrible track record when it comes to how well they maintain it, and especially about tenant relations. As a general statement, there are some, I'm sure, who do well, but if a property is owned locally, that person's far more likely to work with a local renter to maintain that property and to, if they have trouble, try to work out problems. If somebody's experiencing tough times, work with them while they're dealing with rent or help them connect to rental assistance, versus a distant corporation where the management is handled out of a big city. That takes all of the control of that house out of your town. So one solution is for you to be those end buyers and to create a local investment team to buy up rent houses before the corporations snap them up and or buy them back, be the final end buyer and get them back. And you can even do this on a community ownership or a cooperative model. Now, when Deb visited Henrietta, Texas, which has about 3,000 people, they told her that they had an informal group that had bought and fixed up 2 rental houses, and people could join by investing even $1,000 with the group. And that's definitely a project to help you build connections. And there's some more comments going by in the chat with some good ideas. I'm going to let you read those in the chat. I know they'll be saved to go with the recording, but these are good projects that help you to build connections. Another example of taking a kind of a blighted house and turning it into a usable house again comes out of Randolph, Nebraska, population 900 people. They had a project called Revitalize Randolph. And so they used local investors to transform a dilapidated property that had an assessed value of just $8,000. So this was not a great condition property. And they transformed it into a new usable home even before they had a buyer for it. So Gary Van Meter actually told me about this, and it was the first spec home in Randolph in anybody's recent memory. And it was entirely funded by local investors. So they did their homework to make it an attractive house to buyers. They did super energy efficiency. They did some custom touches like really nice locally made cabinets. And they added an additional storage and workshop space in the garage. And then they put in a cast concrete, FEMA approved safe room, which was a big selling point as well. So I really thought it was very smart that they did that workshop and garage space, because that makes the home a good match for makers and crafters who are looking for kind of a live work sort of space. And those are potential entrepreneurs. And they might be looking, that might be your existing residents who are potential entrepreneurs looking for that kind of space. Or it could be somebody that was a new artist that was attracted to their community. And when they did their open house, they had over 150 visitors. In this town of 900 people, they had 150 people visit the open house. And one of those people was the city administrator from a nearby town. So Gary said that was a big win. So I'm going to take a pause right here because the chat has been really active and we are right about at the half-hour mark. And then we'll talk about adding housing. So there's been lots of conversations here. And what do we need to cover? Nancy, is there something we need to cover out of the chat? Did I miss anything?
So Kelly says wholesalers are not necessarily the end buyers. Wholesalers find the properties, negotiate on a price, clean up the issue, get rid of legal issues, and make it available to go on the market, even through MLS or through a private buyer, not necessarily hedge fund cooperatives. And then what I was suggesting is for those people who are investing their financial funds through Thrivent, Thrivent will contribute $250 to you to get involved in a helping project like the retirees that you were helping with. That would be the perfect type of situation where you just let people, I mean, in terms of a question that you could ask, a powerful question is, are you with Thrivent? And, you know, here's a great project for you to say, I want my funds to help the 70-year-old blind people with their house. And I'm going to be involved in that project. You know, there's no auditing of that, but it's spent on direct materials like, you know, we need shingles. Okay, here's $250 for shingles. Yeah.
Okay.
And mine went unused every year because I didn't have a project to invest it with, and it's Thrivent funds. And it's not matching funds, it's just out there.
Yeah. You don't have to put up the matching.
No.
Right?
No.
They're just going to give it to you. There is no match.
Yep.
Cool.
That's one of the benefits of
cool.
being with them. That's it, I think.
Okay, so now let's look at some ideas for adding some new housing in your community. This is the part where people really get excited. This is the part that especially community leaders like to talk about, adding additional housing. So I want you to start with looking at the empty lots within your existing residential areas first. So rather than stretching the infrastructure like water and sewer out to meet the new developments on the outskirts and making more that the town has to maintain, especially if your population's not growing very fast or is declining, then instead of that, let's make the most of the infrastructure you've already invested in. And so this keeps your town also more compact. And when you put your housing closer to your downtown core, and the other essential services, that keeps your community more cohesive rather than stringing it out over longer distances. So people who live close in the core can walk and bike to run more of their errands in town. Yes, Callie says this is called infill development by people who use those terms. And then when we talk to the regular people, when we're doing our little stand up and we've set up our little model home and we're just talking to regular people in the world, they don't know what infill development means. But if you say, we want to build houses on the empty lots that are already here in town, then they can get it, right? So we want to make sure that we make it easy to understand. And then when you talk to developers, you have to know those words, infill development. So you have to speak both, right? You have to be a translator like Callie is. So people who live close can walk, they can bike, they can run their errands, they can get out and join in events that are being held downtown more easily, and they don't have to drive. So they don't have a parking problem to come to those downtown events or visit the downtown stores. So you can see that it is important to fill in those empty lots as much as you can. Now, you may have to change some rules because lots of towns unthinkingly, they've never thought about it. They just ban all types of housing in these core areas except single family homes, single family only. But in small towns, duplexes and triplexes and even fourplexes can make a lot of sense to add lots of housing quickly in your small town as an infill solution. So in Oregon, the towns of Hood River and Madras, Astoria, and St. Helens, these are all under 14,000 in population, and some of them much smaller. But those 4 towns have more than 10% of their households living in these middle housing types. So if you get your town to stop banning all the other choices, then you'll have more variety in your housing in your town as well. So, and another idea that helps keep people in your core is to explore those second story housing in your downtown, because cool upstairs downtown living spaces are really a hot commodity in small towns right now. Young people especially love these spaces. So that makes it an important tool if you want to retain your young people, which you tell us all the time on our survey that that's a critical issue in your communities, is retaining your young people. So having that second story downtown housing can be a tool to help retain as well as attract. Now, Deb's town, Webster City, Iowa, population 8,000. They have a whole range of downtown housing, and most of it is actually new since 2010. So at the top of the line, they have Jake's High-End Apartments. That's probably the official name, Jake's High-End Apartments. But when the big manufacturing plant closed there in Webster City, Jake decided he was just going to reinvest in his community because it mattered to him. So he bought 3 buildings, he gutted them, and he started over from scratch with just the shell. And his apartments never stay empty because they are super high end, beautiful, very well finished out. And Deb says, in fact, they only stay open like 5 minutes, because when somebody says they're leaving, one of their friends says, I want the apartment, put my name in. So they've always got people lined up who want to be there as well. In the middle range are Jimmy's apartments. Now, Jimmy bought a building with an empty second floor, and he rehabbed the upstairs, and he made 3 units up there. Now, these are not the super fancy like Jake's, but Jimmy keeps his apartments in good shape, and they definitely stay rented. And then there are also really low-end apartments. They have been there for decades. They're in horrible shape, but a local person named Donovan bought 2 of those buildings, and he is in the process of rehabbing those units to bring them up more like Jimmy's middle road apartments, and not quite so end of the road. So he's doing this himself though, personally, and so it's going slowly, but he's getting it done. Now, Iowa did put together a list of other successful upper story housing projects and lessons learned, and you will find that in the slides as well. And Deb probably has that link, because Deb's right there with the link. Nancy says, in Holton, Kansas, it is a hot commodity for retirees. They have money to spend. They have money to spend. I scrolled on me, and now I've got to go back here. Okay, they have the money to spend, and they don't want to take care of a lawn anymore. I hear you. All right. And they all have coffee together downtown, and Holton has never looked so good. They put in elevators as well. And Deb gave you the link. And then also, Kansas has recently passed legislation to allow communities to develop the rural housing incentive districts and encourage upper story housing on Main Street. Yes, Leanne, I heard that as well. I'm very excited about that. And I think that's going to be a good tool for small towns. You just got to get people to use it. So now there are some building codes that make this really, really hard. But there's some newer codes that are available, and they are much more old building friendly. So adaptive reuse codes or ordinances, and there are lots of places that are around that are already using them. And so you can probably find an example from Kansas that you can steal from. So this is a build connections question. So you want to ask your local connections, reach out to your regional organizations like your councils of government, your municipal league, that may have more information on that. The Main Street organization, historic preservation people are also a good source for the adaptive reuse stuff. So, and then while you're working on changing rules, because it's the most fun thing you can do, another one to consider is a minimum height requirement for downtown. So Davidson, North Carolina, population 13,000, and they are growing. And so this is why it made particularly good sense for them. They adopted a minimum 2-story height requirement for the downtown. And I know that one of the few new buildings that has gone into downtown in my nearby big town, which is Alva, Oklahoma, population 5,000, just south of Kiowa and Hartner. This only new building we've had for like 20 years was a 1-story building. So, and there are some very highly sought after apartments in other downtown buildings, and we just missed the chance, very rare chance, to add any more. So, and then I want to throw this out here. I don't think any of y'all will make this mistake, but I'm just going to throw it out here. While you're working on downtown housing, do not be tempted to convert storefronts into housing. You're going to need that for a future business because you're going to get more people living downtown. They'll all be having coffee together. You'll need those storefronts. And so there's lots of videos to help you fill your empty buildings. Deb's most popular video ever with Kansas was the filling empty buildings. So don't make the mistake of turning your empty buildings into apartments instead. Now, we also have a couple of new things in the chat. Scott says, if you missed the upstairs downtown workshop by Kansas Main Street a few weeks ago in Hutchinson, here's the slides. So that's in your links. And Chris has a link to the direct link to the PDF. Right there you go. And I appreciate you guys. Nancy says, thank you for sharing those resources. I agree. I second that. I appreciate you sharing these resources with each other. This is that process of asking, who do you know? And also, if I were you, I would save this chat at the end. I know Nancy threw in the instructions on how to save the chat, but also make a note of who were the people that were in the chat the most with great ideas. And you'll be like, when I have questions, now I know who to call, right? These are good folks to contact. Then we're gonna talk about another buzzwordy sort of idea, which are the accessory dwelling units. And this is a good idea to help your community be a little more close knit. And this is just an extra living space, either in an existing house or alongside an existing house. So if you're in an upscale big city neighborhood, then they just call this the pool house or the guest cottage. And you also hear them called the in-law suites. But, you know, in your town, you've probably see people that have an RV parked in their backyard. And in my town, right, like right next to me, my neighbors to the south, the Percivals, during harvest, their family that comes in from out of town parks their RV on the lot and is there just then. But if we wanted to fill in some housing here, it would make sense. We could actually put like a little cottage there on their lot. There's plenty of room. David's got energy efficient improvement guaranteed grant loans and grants link. That's a good one to bookmark. And then Nancy says garage apartments in Houston are very common. Yeah, and I've seen a lot of garage apartments. And then we also see in small towns and rural areas like the barn apartment, which is like the barn shop space, but it's got living quarters there for a hired hand. So it can be the basement, it can be the garage, it can be whatever's working. It can even just be like an extra living suite inside your house, maybe has its own entry, or like a freestanding tiny house. Tiny houses are so popular. But I think these make so much sense for rural areas. Look at our population. We have a lot of seniors. We have people of all ages who need live-in caregivers for one reason or another, or they want a space for family members to live right with them, but with some independence. So again, this may require some rule changes in your municipality, so you'll need to do some building connections. AARP's Livable Communities Project has some free guides to get you started, and there's a link to those in the slides. And Deb's got it on speed dial right there, so there it is. So now we're going to talk about community issues around this, because our commitment at Savior.town, Deb and I, is to help you build a stronger, more unified community. And the issue of housing is an important one to building your community. And like all issues, it is not without controversy. So you may run into resistance from people who do not like change, or do not like new people moving to town, or they worry that new people won't fit in, or they won't be the kind of community that they want. So just know this, there are fewer people that are resisting than you think. But it's really uncomfortable when people complain to you that they don't want any change. They don't want those kind of people moving to town. You remember that because it's uncomfortable. But you don't remember the 1,001 ways that most of the people in town are being welcoming, because we're small town people. We just do it. And then you never see it. I know when I lived in Alva, there was a lady that was my alley neighbor. She was baking cookies for her neighbor's kids because her neighbor had just moved in, and she said, these kids are too thin. So she's making cookies for her neighbor's kids. That's a welcoming attitude, but you just don't ever hear about it. you don't think about the people who stop to help somebody carry a heavy load, or people that loan a pickup or help them do things. You don't think about the people who go out of their way to invite a newcomer to a community event and then go pick them up and take them. But you remember the negative stories. So what I want you to do is, when you do hear the positive stories, you hear about the Lady Bacon cookies, you see somebody help a newcomer, magnify those stories. Make sure everyone knows that it's normal and expected to welcome new people in town. And that will help set a tone for your community. Now, I know you are not the problem. That's not who you are. But I do know that you deal with people who are. So it's okay to gently point out that your town is open to everyone. And sometimes this resistance is motivated by racial and ethnic differences. And that is really troubling. But it's also not something that we should be silent about. This is the point where we have to have those difficult conversations with them. And it is up to us to have those difficult conversations in order to make our towns more open to new people. But you don't have to be confrontational or angry. You can start with a simple question like, what makes you think that way? That's one of Deb's. What makes you think that way? And then if they say something outrageous, then you can try what the kids say, which is, dude, that is messed up. Now, I know it's not easy to speak up when someone says something hateful, but just a simple, that is messed up, can really help draw attention to the fact we want to be a welcoming town. We want to be that way. The world is changing, and change is hard for some people. So, things are changing all the time, and that includes our towns, and changing even faster every minute, it feels like. So what I would love for you to write down is that, and I'm gonna throw this in the chat for you, but I'm gonna say it. Our town is changing all the time because it is a living community of people. And new people in your town are part of the change. So I'm gonna throw that in the chat for you, because I think it's that important. So even if you're just trying to get one of those rule changes, which Callie threw another one that you need to check on and give you the updated codes for 2018, finally gives an application for tiny houses. So if you're trying to make some of those rule changes and you need officials to help you with that, don't start by trying to convince them, right? You don't want to show up and go, Callie says you need to do this 2018 IRC code and you're not up to date, right? Don't start with that. Start by getting them out of the meeting room. It's always easier to help people see a new point of view when they're standing in a new place, right? So those thoughtful conversations, you can have those in the empty lots. You can stand in an empty upstairs apartment that could be, or you could be at a house in front of a house that, you just need some renovation, or even if you will take them to your cardboard mock-up house, that's going to help them feel and experience something out in the real world. And that will help fortify them when it comes time to vote. So here is Deb's powerful secret for helping to change people's perspectives. And that is to ask about their kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews. See, even if someone is thinking negatively about new people moving in, they still might see some benefit to improving housing for their own family members in the future. So ask them about their kids and grandkids, nieces and nephews. And Nancy has pointed out, yes, Iowa State University did some research, and it shows that the communities that prosper the best over time are the ones that are open to newcomers in making decisions, and they are open to new ideas. So that's why we pay attention to this, because it fits so helps us inform our idea friendly method with the research backing. And Deb can probably find that link, and if not, I'll find it while we're doing our final chat here in our final few minutes. I do want to share one more story that Deb shared with me, and that's the story of Mo Siemens, who owns a pottery shop in Deb's town of Webster City, Iowa. See, Mo bought an old house. She converted the upstairs into one apartment, and then she converted the downstairs to use for Airbnb. So temporary guests coming in and out. Airbnb has this program called the Airbnb Experience Program. So Mo created a package where people could stay at her Airbnb and then come make pottery with her in her studio, which is really cool. So over the winter, she had guests that came from Pennsylvania, And they had a great time. They got to make pottery. It was wonderful. They loved the downtown. People were super friendly. They were excited because of the awesome outdoors all around Webster City. And they bought a house right in Webster City because of the experience. And that's the difference you can make in your community by working on housing together. So now is a great time to pick up your pen. If you haven't already, make a note of an action that you're going to do right away. And then the chat is open. And if you, like Callie probably has some stuff to share that she could go right here on camera.
Becky,
Yes.
Brad told us he's been waiting his whole career to be able to say, dude, that's messed up.
You have our permission, right? If you need us to write it down, we will do that for you.
And Bradford is a professor at K-State, so that's awesome.
You know what? I have this whole thing of like, just go do the thing. And there was actually a person who was at Oklahoma Extension. They're not there now, so I'm not telling stories on somebody who's going to get in trouble right now. But they actually were out encouraging. We talked about idea friendly a lot, and this person was out encouraging local communities. Like they're like, well, the Department of Transportation is right. The first thing you see when you come into our town, it's the ugliest thing in town. And this person said, just plant some shrubs in front of it. They won't even notice for like 6 months. You'll totally get away with it. And I'm like, can Extension say things like that? Oh my gosh. So I'm here to give you guys permission to do everything. Right? Y'all can do it. We'll write permission slips.
Becky, I just love when synergy happens. And, your idea friendly is what a lot of people just intuitively do, but you've written out the steps for people. And the synergy for me is that I'm about to facilitate a contentious discussion about a historic downtown building. And I'm going to go right back to your idea friendly and say, look, people, you got to bring your partners around. When you're talking about your county commissioners, you cannot do this by being at odds with each other. Bring them, right. Make sure that everybody wins here.
Absolutely. And as much as possible, have that discussion at the location.
Right.
Because when it's in a meeting room, like meeting rooms are just like negativity soaks into the walls in meeting rooms. And so you have to leave the meeting room to have a good positive discussion. So you want to go to that historic location and have that conversation there. We're just down to about 10 minutes. So if there's the chat has calmed down. Bradford has his permission to say, dude, that's messed up. And so I think this is a great time for you to do your local sharing from folks.
Awesome. Becky, thank you. That was awesome. And I will, like I say,
I just want to say one more thank you to Callie and everybody that threw great resources into the chat, great comments, additional information, things to watch out for, mistakes not to make. That's really helpful for each other. Make sure to repeat for everybody how they saved the chat, if you would.
Yes.
And then I'm going to mute.
So go to, I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button when I was trying to make sure. Go to your own square on these Hollywood squares. And there are 3 dots there that you can, oops, I did it again, Colleen. Did it to somebody else. So there are 3 dots at the top right, and you can save the chat from those 3 dots. Well,
and I suppose you can also save a copy of the chat, Nancy, and post it next to the slides.
Okay, that's a good idea. That is a good idea. Thank you for that. Okay, so what did I do here? I've got somebody's, there we go. So who has anything to share about what's going on in your community, or your final thoughts on Becky's, something that you're doing for your community to something that we can emulate and share in our communities? Please just unmute yourself and share.
This is Elizabeth Weiss, and Executive Director of the Community Foundation in Dickinson County. And what we're doing is looking at taking a portion of our assets, and instead of having the money invested with our financial advisors that are investing in Apple and Google, is to take a portion of that and to reinvest it locally. And we're looking at a housing project is kind of what we're looking at. And we have economic development involved. We have community partners involved. And we're on baby step number probably 2 in this area, but it's exciting to see people coming together and for the Community Foundation to have a seat at the table for this imperative project for our community. And the downtown revitalization with the apartments upstairs might be a way that we go, or try to possibly revitalize a hotel that's downtown, a historic hotel that could also be housing on 3 or 4 floors, and to have a downtown hotel there as well. So that's what we're working on.
And Elizabeth, I'm sure you've seen what they've done in the Levi's building in Salina. That was part of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For Becky and Deb, did you know Levi's had their corporate start, and as I understand it, in Salina, Kansas?
Yeah, it's not Levi's, it's Lee.
Lee Jeans. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me.
I did not know that.
I didn't either until I saw that project. I love this, people's ideas. All right. Anybody else?
So there's a couple that I'm going to go ahead and read out just in case people won't read the chat.
Good.
Bradford says, advocate for a state housing extension specialist. I think that's a really smart idea with all the programs going on in Kansas, and as organized as y'all are, it makes perfect sense to have a state housing extension specialist. Johnny says, I'm going to start an Airbnb experience, which I think is terrific as well. That helps draw people to your community. It's a good connector. Lisa says, I'm going to start listing and researching empty lots as soon as possible. Then I will contact owners. Just getting a list of the owners makes a huge difference. And she says, I think we will have a lot of out of town, out of state kids that own, which I think is absolutely true. Definitely. Lacey, my action to network with the housing department that is housed in my building. Find a list of land bank properties is priority 1. Good move. Good move.
Perfect. So next month, our speaker is going to be SCORE volunteers, the Service Corps of Retired Executives, and they're going to share simple steps for starting your small business and other SCORE helps. And I've added a link. I will add a link to the calendar in the chat so that you can see what the future programs are on. If you have an idea of a program that you'd like to see in 2022, let me know. I'd love to hear it. And one of the things that I'd love to have a program on is land banks, and Kelly's going to help me set one up because I've heard from towns how helpful land banks have been to them, but I haven't yet found somebody who will do a program.
So maybe you just need to do a little roundtable discussion on it.
Possibly. That's a fantastic idea, Becky, because yes, there's clearly a lot of experience in the room. And that's an excellent idea to get more like a panel discussion. Perfect. Well, we are about to enter. I don't mean to hurry anybody if you have other thoughts, and I'm going to copy Becky's idea of asking people for their next first action steps, because boy, you've got some great actions and we want to inspire you and encourage you. So on that note, those of you who have been here before, I like to leave you with a little inspiration, and today's inspiration comes from Vincent van Gogh. If you think about your own action steps, think about this. If you hear a voice within you say, you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. So take your action and you'll soon learn that you do have power to change things. So go out and create a great Kansas Day. Becky and Deb, thank you so much. Becky, thank you for all the great ideas you've given us, and including me on helping this small town break down a contentious issue that should be bringing them together. Fantastic. We'll see you next month.